Hello and welcome to Conservation Matters. I'm Shane Mahoney, and I have dedicated my life to the conservation of wild animals and wild places. I invite you to join me as I explore the science, the issues, and the challenges impacting global conservation in the 21st century. Together, we will seek solutions, and together, we can affect change. Conservation, after all, is everybody's business. One natural world, one humanity, one chance. Conservation matters. To learn more, please visit conservationvisions.com. Thanks for listening. First of all, I'd have to say that it's very good to be back. It's been almost a decade, or perhaps it is a decade, since I last spoke to the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. And when I was in the board meeting earlier today, I was reminded of why I believe so completely in the capacity of this organization to do great things for the conservation of wildlife and for the preservation of those traditions which in this country and in other parts of the world are held dear. The tradition of utilizing wildlife in a respectful way, building communities and memories and institutions for conservation around that activity, and ultimately building not only a better country, but a better world. There can be no doubt that we live in a constantly changing world now. A world that seems to bring unending challenge to the things that we hold dear and to the values that we cherish. This plays out in a theater that is much wider than the world of wildlife and conservation. It is about the world that we consider to be decent and correct and respectful and democratic and open to opportunity for individuals. It plays out, in fact, in every theater of the human endeavor. The world is becoming an incredibly different place. My message tonight, however, is to remind us all that it is in the times of greatest challenge that the greatest opportunities present themselves, and that particularly for the citizens of the United States of America, it seems that you almost have to have challenge to achieve the greatness that is now rightfully yours. Two years ago, for any of us who were involved in the hunting world, the death of a Tanzanian lion taken by an American hunter set in motion a series of events that were completely unprecedented in the history of the hunting world. Never before had the death of a single animal in a distant country become the topic of talk shows and news broadcasts, not for a day, but for week after week after week in this country, in Canada, throughout Europe, in Africa, in Asia, in Russia, indeed, throughout the entire world. It may be possible for some people to simply dismiss this and say it is a phenomenon that has passed. But I do not believe it has. The
pressures that have been built that led to the Cecil event are with us, ladies and gentlemen. They are with us globally, and they are with us in our own nations. Unfortunately, this is simply not your daddy's world anymore. As much as we would wish for this, it is not the case. We are seeing massive changes in the way the land is used, massive movements of people away from the rural lifestyles that were part and parcel of nourishing the hunting tradition in our countries. We are seeing a changing makeup in our nations of different views and perspectives from around the world that are shaking up the kind of normal models that we believe would always be with us. We are seeing vastly changing attitudes towards not only hunting itself, but towards animals and towards wildlife. We are seeing a rising empathy for animals worldwide. It is not a fiction, it is a fact. And in the international theaters in which I work, I see it and witness it every day. Not in itself a bad thing, but something we are all going to have to deal with. And of course, we have the rise of social media and the capacity now for anyone to be an expert and all of us to communicate with one another in an instant. No longer do great people have to travel long distances and stand on pulpits to speak to the people of their nation, stepping off trains and giving speeches and getting back on again to give it again and again and again, as Teddy Roosevelt did in his campaigns. Now one can sit in one's office and reach the world. But this also means that the world can reach us. And the attitudes that are building in the world will have implications for what we do and for who we are and for what we must do to safeguard the things that we believe in. They never came for free, but now they will come with a higher price tag, certainly. At the same time, all of this change is swirling around us. We in the hunting world face two other significant scenarios, challenges that we must accept. If you imagine the body of a snake that has recently had a large meal, there is a lump that is obvious to anyone who looks at the animal. Well, in our hunting community, there is a lump as well. That lump is the people between 55 and 75, 85 years of age, all of us of whom will pass over in the next 10, 15, 20, 25 years. And despite all our best efforts so far, we do not have the recruitment behind that. We are 4.5% of the people in this nation now who hunt. In some states, it is 1.5%. We know that we are going to hit this wall. And we know that if we become too few, we will become irrelevant. The second great challenge we face is all of these figures and statistics that tell us that 75 to 80% of the American and Canadian people support our kind of hunting, the kind of hunting that is represented in this room, the kind of brilliant hunting we saw on Johnny Morris's videos. remember that those individuals have memories. They are generations who remember former generations of fathers and uncles and grandfathers who hunted. So of course they think that we are good people and that we do good things when we do the thing right. But this is changing, ladies and gentlemen. And we have to be prepared to find our way through this. The support for hunting cannot be left to the memory of individuals. Yet despite these problems, I, who have been in this business for 40 years, and who have lectured and written and spoken about the challenges facing hunting and what we ought to do to try and address them, I am now incredibly optimistic. And it is not because I am insane, I don't think. It is because these great controversies that have come to us, benefit of Cecil, has moved the greatest conservation organizations in the world, such as the World Wildlife Fund, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, and others, to look deeply at what hunting has done for the conservation of wildlife worldwide. And they have concluded, in agreement with us, that yes, sportsmen and women and the activity of hunting done in a sustainable manner operates as a conservation mechanism the world over, from Tanzania and Botswana, from Namibia and South Africa, to the countries of Europe, to here in this extraordinary country, in every state and every province in Canada. We never had that before. We have it now. At the same time, those social trends that were moving people away from hunting, away from the lifestyle that we believe in, away from the values that we cherish, they, like all social trends, eventually bend back on themselves. And now what we have in our cities, in our suburbs, in the very places we thought where it was lost, we have people that want to be locavores. They want to write books about farm to table. They want organic food. They want a lifestyle that will have them live forever and die of nothing. And one of the things they're realizing is that our tradition, our lifestyle, our venturing out onto those lands and pushing ourselves in these hunting experiences and harvesting those animals that have lived wild and free their entire existence, having them die in small periods of pain, yes, but small periods of pain, and harvesting them for food and sharing them with friends and family. They are coming to understand that this is something valuable. This is something precious. But they are not coming to this as we did. Their daddies didn't take them. They weren't going across the street to Uncle Jack's farm and doing their first harvest of squirrels or rabbits and making their way up to deer and eventually something bigger. They're coming at it from a different world because the world has changed. But they are coming. And of course, I am encouraged by the fact that we share, all of us, hunters, non-hunters, all of us share this fascination and love for animals. And let's not be afraid in hunting meetings to say we love animals, because that is one of the things the public is looking for from us. We've given them enough fodder in our television shows that we think of them as targets. So maybe after 25 years of that experiment, we ought to start telling them we love them. Because deep down, everybody does. I talk about young people and their reaction, but amongst us here in this room tonight, let us put a puppy on the floor. And how many of you will look to it? All of you. And that gives me hope, because we have something in common with all of society. But most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, I am optimistic because I know the character of the American sportsman. This nation and Canada joined together to form the great North American model. And one of the things we share in common is the disease of sharing. It is absolutely impossible for a hunter to take an animal, to bring it home, butchered, cleaned, and packaged, and not immediately begin to think who he or she is going to share it with. You don't go to the local grocery store, however, and buy a roast of meat and bring it to your neighbor, do you? No. And if you did, you wouldn't be neighbors for so much longer. But as soon as you take something wild, the first thing that comes out of our breast is the notion of sharing. And let me tell you, there is not a culture in the world that does not respect people who share what they have with others. And if it is something wild, it is a gift that brings ecstasy to people. But even beyond that, I am optimistic because of the American nation. I am not from America, although I spend so much time here. Maybe I should try to stay in America. But I am not an American citizen. And I don't need to say anything to you as American citizens that I don't believe. But as before other American audiences and other audiences around the world where I lecture and speak and debate and confront people on these issues, I have an extraordinary appreciation for the greatness in this country. And I know that you yourselves are worried about it. And I know some of the rest of the world is kind of rubbing their hands and saying, oh, wouldn't it be marvelous now if the Americans just had a wee bit of trouble, you know? You are the world's only superpower. In every democratized country that shares the values of this nation knows deep down in the bowels of its governments, no matter what they say, and in the hearts of their citizens, no matter what they say, deep down there is the recognition that this is the only nation that ultimately, if push comes to shove, can safeguard those ideals. This, the United States of America. You demonstrated this in 2 world wars, that had they gone in different ways, all of our lives around the world would have been imperiled and demeaned. Every one of us in the free world that has the opportunities we have, at some point owes a debt to the United States of America. And I, for one, ladies and gentlemen, will never, ever forget it. I look at your achievements in the Revolutionary War. I don't have to go to recent history. I can go back a little further. How was it that this group of backwoodsmen was able to defeat the greatest army and navy the world had ever seen? What is it that's built inside you that makes that completely improbable event not only probable but real? How do you as a country fight a civil war that spills blood across this nation, mingling the blood of brother against brother and son against father, north against south, good men against good men? And then have a president who speaks for a few moments on one of the bloodiest of all battlefields, and somehow you put this behind you. Oh, I know there are some resilient terminologies, but you didn't go on to fight a civil war for 30, 40, and 50 years, did you? Lee might have made that choice, but he didn't, partly because of the way he was treated, the terms of surrender. Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor. At the time that the Pacific Fleet was bombed, it took an average of 2 to 3 years to build a major battleship and aircraft carrier. One. Within 2 years of that event, ladies and gentlemen, certainly within 3, the United States of America and its Pacific Fleet owned, took back that expanse. There was not another country on this planet that could have achieved this. Technological advances. You know, I go to Europe sometimes, they say, oh, the Americans are having a bit of trouble, you know, with their economies and so on and so forth. I remind them that without the Marshall Plan, there would be no EU. There would absolutely, this is not a lie, there would absolutely no chance there would ever be a European Union except for the fact that the United States of America helped to rebuild all of Europe after World War II. Not a chance. Would never exist. Not a chance in the world. But some of them have short memories. But they won't have short memories if Mr. Putin decides to make his big move. They'll immediately turn from talking to themselves, and they're all going to look eastward and look for the stars and stripes. And you can mark that down. And then I remind them, you think America's greatness is behind them? Okay, well, let's take a look at technology. Technology has transformed the world in the last 35 to 40 years, completely transformed it. Who brought us the internet? Who brought us the personal computer? Who brought us the personal communication device? The United States of America. I also have confidence because this is the most philanthropic nation in the entire world. There is not another country that comes even close. You honored a man this evening who exemplifies it. And fortunately for your country, there are many, many others who over time have acted as Johnny Morris has acted. And the great thing, in addition to that, is you recognize these people. You honor them. But out of all those great achievements, I really wasn't supposed to talk about any of that. So that's what happens when you freewheel and when you see amazing things happen before your eyes just a few minutes before you speak. So I apologize. But the greatest of all your achievements, ladies and gentlemen, and why I believe we will rise to these new challenges to hunting, is because you gave the world conservation. You gave it at a time of the greatest wildlife and resource depletion crisis in the history of your nation, 120, 110 years ago. And out of a nation that was denuding its forests, despoiling its waterways, destroying its anadromous fish runs, eliminating shorebirds and wading birds, and destroying the bison and moving all kinds of animals to the edge and beyond the edge of extinction. You had eliminated beavers east of the Rocky Mountains. They were extinct. Beavers. Every single species, deer, pronghorn, elk, black bear, wood duck, Canada goose, they would all be on the endangered species list if you had had one. Thank your lucky stars that you didn't. They'd probably still be on it. Even if they were bumping into your cars and eating all your roses and sleeping under your decks and so on and so forth. And I do not believe that this country is going to give away that legacy, and that legacy was substantially built on what the hunters and anglers and their families gave back to this country, to its institutions, to its state agencies, and through volunteerism and their own money directly to wildlife programs on the land. If there is ever one of you that sits in this room any year in the 37 that this has been held and ever wonders whether you did something worthwhile, just imagine for a moment that there was never a Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. And then think about, well, what about there wasn't a Turkey Federation and a Sheep Foundation and a Pheasants Forever and a Ducks Unlimited and an on and on and on and on. And ask yourselves what it would be like. A hell of a lot poorer than it is now. Now we live with so many deer. People say they're rats with antlers. We have so many Canada geese, they call them flying carp. We have gone to superabundance, ladies and gentlemen, on a model that was built not exclusively. Let us never be arrogant about this. We don't need to be. Never was it built exclusively by us. But we were the great pillar. We were the thing that never gave in, never broke the tradition, never stopped giving. And in all that time, the hunting community never once said, "We paid the freight, so it's ours." Not once. But the hunting community said, "We will pay the freight, we will do the right thing, and it is for everyone." This is American idealism, ladies and gentlemen. It's not just hunting. But we now need leadership like we have never had it before. We have a man honored here this evening who is building something in Springfield, Missouri that I have walked through with Rob Keck and passed my comments on to Johnny in a phone conversation he may not remember. But I told him that I have seen almost all the great institutions in the world, and I have. I've been very fortunate in my life to travel very extensively. And what you are building there will stand up with any in the world. And to think that one man has decided to give, I do not care how much money a person has, that they should decide to give that much to the people of this country, because they sure as hell didn't build a place that big just for himself to walk around in and have his coffee in the morning, is extraordinary. I am asking the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation for a favor. I have no right to ask this, but that's the great thing about being a person like me. That doesn't matter. I'm going to ask it anyway. I believe this organization can be the one to take the big steps. There are a lot of hunting-based organizations that now realize they have to change. We have to change our magazines. We have to change our television shows, or perhaps eliminate 99.99% of them, except Randy's and a few others, of course. I don't know where Randy is, but he's there somewhere. We have to make a great deal of change, and most groups will want to make little small changes. But little small changes are not enough. The lump in the snake and the loss of support by the American public, which can happen because of generational change, demands a vessel that will carry us across this divide and to the other side. And in that biblical sense, we have to have an organization that will step far enough ahead that others will see that they too can follow. You can do it because of the makeup of this organization. You can do it because, despite it is now an established organization formed by some people who are still here with you and still on your board, the same decency, the same principles, the same welcoming, the same respect, the same idealism is here now. I see it after 10 years away. Your first mission statement said for elk and other wildlife species. That's a statement that should only occur in modern writing. It occurred all those years ago when Charlie Decker and others made this happen. And you are about conserving the lands of America. And land has always been in the blood and sinew of Americans. From Jefferson's dream to the power of private property rights in this country, to the incredible legacy of the public lands of this nation, land has always resonated with the American psyche. It built the wealth of this country. And the wealth of this country helped fuel its greatness. I do not see any reason why you shouldn't do this. If you do it, you will establish the new frontier for conservation and the maintaining of the relevance of hunting in our modern society that has changed so much. People respect and believe in this organization. I respect and believe in this organization. So I ask you, don't take small steps. Take the big steps that others are afraid to take, and give that greater measure to your own personal lives, to the lives of your families, and to the legacy of this incredible nation.